We keep things rolling here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. And coming down the pipeline, I have two really big stories coming from the WNBA. And it's interesting, whenever we're talking about the WNBA, at least people who aren't covering it day to day and a lot of good faith and bad faith in argument people, it's always about the growth of the game, right? It's always about ratings. It's always about how big can it get? How much money can these star athletes attain comparative to their male counterparts around all different type of sports? And these two stories are kind of fascinating to me because one of them is the story of one of the all-time greats, not only WNBA players, but basketball players of all time, Diana Taurasi, announced her retirement. And in the same wave of news, that the Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever will be playing their games at the United Center here in Chicago. And both of those are kind of microcosms, macrocosms, if you will, of the entire sport of the WNBA. And I want to start with Diana Taurasi first. This comes to us from Sports Illustrated by Mike McDaniel. Phoenix Mercury legend Diana Taurasi announces retirement. Taurasi is retiring after a 20-year professional career. Quote, "I just didn't have it in me. That was pretty much when I knew it was time to walk away," Taurasi said in an exclusive interview. Quote, "Mentally and physically, I'm just full. That's probably the best way I can describe it. I'm full and I'm happy." Taurasi played 20 seasons for the Mercury after being selected with the top pick in the 2004 WNBA draft out of UConn. Taurasi won 3 WNBA titles in 2007, 2009, and 2014, and was named Finals MVP in 2009 and 14. She was also named League MVP in 2009, averaging 20.4 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game as she helped the Mercury capture the WNBA championship. Taurasi was named to the WNBA All-Star team 11 times and was named to 14 different All-WNBA teams. She was named a first-team All-WNBA selection 10 times and was named to the second team 4 additional times. Taurasi is the WNBA's all-time leader in points scored at 10,646, which is nearly 3,000 clear of Tina Charles, who is second in scoring in league history. She is also the league's all-time leader in three-point field goals and is 4th all-time in assists. In addition to her WNBA accolades, Taurasi also put together an incredible international basketball career. She is a 3-time EuroLeague MVP and a 3-time Russian League Player of the League. Taurasi won 6 EuroLeague titles during her 12-year career overseas, where she played during the WNBA offseason. Lastly, but certainly not least, Taurasi is one of the most decorated American Olympic basketball players of all time. She has captured 6 gold medals as a member of the United States women's basketball team. Taurasi certainly is an argument as the best women's basketball player of all time, as the article finishes up. And you can check out the entire thing over by Mike McDaniel at SI.com. Phoenix Mercury legend Diana Taurasi announces retirement. So let's start there, right? The growth of the game. Obviously, we're going to talk about Caitlin Clark. We're going to talk about Angel Reese. We're going to talk about the Fever, the Sky, and the growth of the WNBA. So many stars from Sue Bird on, right? You know, we've seen what Maya Moore has done over her career and the advocacy she did as she retired. Lisa Leslie, just goes Don Staley. Like, you could just go down the entire list. And Diana Taurasi specifically, to me, I'm going to go personal here. My father is a huge college basketball fan, not really a big NBA or WNBA fan, but he adores men and women's college basketball. And for me, in 2004 and the years growing up before that, the UConn men's team, but more specifically, that UConn's women's team was everything. And the center of that for me in my childhood, me when I was learning to really appreciate the ins and outs of all sports, but in this case, basketball, Diana Taurasi was her. I know a lot of people love Juju and Caitlin Clark and all these young superstars that are coming up into WNBA. But to me, the greatest WNBA player, and that is no disrespect to any of the greats before, the greats that are coming, was Diana Taurasi. She's the closest thing that we have attitude-wise to Kobe Bryant in the WNBA. Think about how good A'ja Wilson is. Think about how good Kelsey Plum is. Think about how good any of these players are, but none of them had the intimidation factor that Diana Taurasi had. She was as tough as nails. She was a jerk on the court, but she was a master at everything she did. Everything she did was with precision, accuracy. There was no flaw in the game of Diana Taurasi. I don't know how many flowers we can give her. That's how great of an athlete she is. That's how great of a basketball player she was. That's how important she is in the lore of the sport. Obviously, there's always going to be the people that talk about it's not as popular as the NBA, or they try to discredit the skill level. There is no discrediting how great of a basketball player Diana Taurasi is. She would make any one of you gym warriors, any one of us gym warriors, look like fools with 30% of effort. She's one of the coldest basketball players we have ever seen grace a basketball court. She was it's interesting to say ambassador, right? Because correlating this to this story that's coming to us from ESPN, the Chicago Sky moving both games versus the Fever to the United Center this season. This is from Michelle Steele. Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky will be hosting Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in the Some Bigger Digs this season. The Sky are moving both of their highly anticipated home games against the Fever to the United Center, marking the first WNBA games in the history of the 31-year-old venue, known for being home arena of the Chicago Bulls and Chicago Blackhawks. Quote, Chicago Sky fans have consistently shown up for the team and the city, said Sky president Adam Fox in a statement. Quote, we want to reward their passion and dedication by bringing this excitement to an expanded capacity. The games originally scheduled for June 7th and July 26th, now July 27th, are expected to break franchise attendance records for the Sky, who play in the 10,000-seat Wintrust Arena, which is a beautiful arena. The current attendance record for the franchise occurred on July 13, 2016, in front of 16,444 at the All-State Arena outside of Chicago, which is at Rosemont, the old Rosemont Horizon Theater. The United Center can accommodate over 20,000 fans. So check out that entire article over at ESPN.com. Sky moving both games versus Fever to the United Center this season by Michelle Steele. So combining both stories here on the Sports Cubicle, I'm your host, Mike Mercado, as we're breaking down the retirement of one of the greats, arguably, in my opinion, the greatest WNBA player of all time, Diana Taurasi, and now the growth of the sport as the Indiana Fever and the Chicago Sky will play two of the Chicago games here at the United Center and not at Wintrust Arena. You can correlate the two. Diana Taurasi was one of those players that really started the movement of the popularity of the WNBA growing. That UConn brand, that Tennessee brand really helped establish not just a competitiveness that we as sports fans love. We love to see grittiness. We love to see greatness, and we love to see greatness overcome adversity. I think watching what happened from the time of Diana Taurasi on, watching the growth of the WNBA, watching how other basketball players, more specifically the male counterparts, their male counterparts in the NBA, giving them their flowers, talking about how nice their games are. And then you look about the maturation of said game, looking at what Caitlin Clark has done for the WNBA. There's always going to be a lot of drama surrounding Caitlin Clark because people use her as a vessel for their political gains on either side of the aisle. But there is no argument that she, along with her counterparts in the WNBA, some of the greats that we've been mentioning, including Angel Reese, who's going to be in that game opposite her for the Chicago Sky, have helped grow this game. Diana Taurasi being in commercials for Nike and athletic commercials and Gatorade and all these different things were some of those steps that now we have Angel Reese having McDonald's selections all over your social media feed. Caitlin Clark is in the front of magazines and red carpets. The growth has not only been great to see, it has been earned because of off the backs of players like Taurasi, who are not just, and I use this word respectfully, but people try to make it gimmicks as if they've never seen women be able to ball out. And Diana Taurasi, to me, in my childhood, my teenage years, as an adult, covering sports, she was one of those that she would smack you if you disrespected her, if you get the kind of drift I'm going with. It was, you never disrespected Taurasi in her game. Was she representative? How great of a basketball player she is. And to watch the sport grow to what we were talking about last season, that the Sky and Fever needed to play at the United Center because that game was just too big. You have a franchise that has won their first recent championship with one of the greats in Candace Parker, which is another one of these superstars. Again, think about that moment of UConn, Diana Taurasi, all the way to Candace Parker in Tennessee to where we're at now. It's hard to put into words just how fast this has been, because there's always a lot of pushback, right? Politically, socially, there's always a lot of pushback whenever you have women in sports kind of gradually growing. And like, I see the comments already here. I can already see when we're talking about Angel Reese, is she a star? How can you compare it to Caitlin Clark? You know, obviously Caitlin Clark's a unicorn, but the idea of like Angel Reese not doing her part. And all this to say that a 20,000 seat stadium in Chicago is going to sell out twice. And it's because of the stardom, the superstardom of Caitlin Clark, the fan base of a Chicago Sky team that has won a championship off the back of one of its hometown heroes and one of the greatest of all time in Candace Parker. You could go all the way back, for me, people from my generation, to Diana Taurasi. And there are Cheryl Swoops, you know, obviously Cheryl Miller. Like, there is plenty of greats that are the reason why we're here. If you're a WNBA fan, if you're a women's basketball fan. But for us to see in the same week, Diana Taurasi retiring, and the Chicago Sky, Indiana Fever, declaring that they're going to be announcing they're going to play 2 Chicago games at the United Center, I think it's important to give kudos to Caitlin Clark and her stardom and her play to back it up, to help sell out the United Center twice, and to acknowledge what Diana Taurasi meant to the WNBA, to basketball in general, to basketball fans everywhere, and how the growth of the sport can be traced back to superstars like that, and how bright of a future the league can have when you're seeing stories like the United Center hosting 2 Chicago Sky versus Indiana Fever games. So shout out to Diana Taurasi. I mean, what a career, what a ball player, what a hooper, and what a personality. I can't wait to see her, Sue Bird, some of these other people do podcasts, watch alongs during the WNBA finals. It's going to be great content for us to break down and listen to what they think about this generation of young superstar women in the WNBA. And watching those young superstars in the WNBA sell out the United Center, as the Chicago Sky and Indiana Fever have announced 2 of their games in Chicago to be played at the UC, the home that Michael Jordan built. Some really cool stories that we wanted to talk about here on the Sports Cubicle. But let us know your thoughts. What did you think about the announcement of the obvious announcement that the 2 Chicago games between the Fever and the Sky will be at the UC, and the retirement of Diana Taurasi? We are on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle, and you can check us out on Twitter at Mike and Media. Make sure you listen to us every Sunday night on WCPT 820 and WSBC 1240 AM Chicago. We got a whole lot left on this edition of the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.